What's up, y'all, man? It's Jonathan Owens here. Another episode of The Word Spoken. Man, today's episode might hit a lot of people differently, but it is important that we know as believers about what's going on in this situation. So we're going to tackle it today, and I want you to enjoy it, but be informed, because this is the type of episode that needs to be put out. I see everybody else, like fellow Christian YouTubers, putting out videos, and they have great content and videos about it, like brother, what do you mean, and Ruslan, and just many others. So I'm going to try my best to bring a video about this today that is informative, but hopefully you can understand it. That's the best thing about it, understanding. So do me a favor, subscribe and like. I appreciate it. Let's dive into this episode today. So we see right now, well, like this is a thing that I'm pretty sure like everybody agrees on, that Palestinians should have their own land. That's a non-starter. That's, everybody should be able to come on board and agree with that. Like Palestinians should have their own land. The question is it supposed to be on the land that Israel is talking about, whether that's the West Bank or Gaza? Is that the land that they're supposed to be occupied? Well, let's look at this. And just this disclaimer, like Israel is not perfect, far from it. They too need Jesus, just like every other person in the world needs to be able to stand before the Lord and say, I accepted your son. So they are not excused, but God still has a plan for them. He deals with different people differently. He shows no partiality, but God never breaks his promises. He's promised Israel thousands of years ago, and he did not forget about that. So let's look at this. I'm going to read you like maybe 2 excerpts from the guys over, I don't know how many people who are over there will make up the questions or answer them, but the people over there at gotquestions.org, I want you to see something interesting what they talked about. So here's the first one. It's basically, what is the promised land that God had gave Israel? What is the promised land? So if you see this, it says, according to Genesis 15:18 and Joshua 1:4, the land God gave to Israel included everything from the Nile River in Egypt to Lebanon, south to north, and everything from the Mediterranean Sea to the Euphrates River, west to east. On today's map, the land God has stated belongs to Israel includes everything in modern-day Israel possesses, plus all of the territory occupied by the Palestinians, the West Bank and Gaza, plus some of Egypt and Syria, plus all of Jordan, plus some of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Thus, Israel currently possesses only a fraction of the land God had promised them. The rest of their inheritance likely awaits the return of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. God has given his word, and the nation of Israel will never cease as long as the sun still shines by day, and moon and stars will shine by night. Jeremiah 31:35-37. Now, man, that's important. So I did see, like I said, shout out to Ruslan and his great video, and he pointed out about the different nuances of what's going on. And he said something about it depends on when you start your clock. Do you count? Do you say who owns the land? Do you go back 100 years? Do you go back 1,000 years? Do you go back 2,000 years? When do you start your clock? Because if the land probably is switching, when do you go back? Well, the Bible answers that. It goes back to when God said that this land now belongs to Israel so 1,000 years ago. After he told Abraham that I'm going to give you this land, promised that I'm going to give you this land, from then, it's it. God has spoken already. So now the land belongs forevermore to Israel, and then by a product from Judah, which we get the term Jews. So if that's the case, the land belongs to them. Now this is something important right here. This is something real important that I want you to get. So here, look at this. Israel is doing what they know and what God has always told them to do. So as far as like, conquering land or conquering those situations that's supposed to be their land, like, now if they go back to what I had already mentioned, it doesn't mean that everything was done in the right way. But you'll be surprised that God said the same thing ago. Because remember, in today's day, well, it's the same thing happened then too. But especially today, I believe that just because Israel say that's their land and say, like, it's ours, a country ain't gonna just give it up, or people ain't gonna just give it up easily, or they, like, based off everything now, everybody's going off United Nations and other international law and all that stuff. Like I said, God doesn't care about the international law or United Nations, but that's the world that Israel is living in today. They didn't have that back thousands of years ago, so they ain't had to worry about none of that stuff. So, but today you do. But if you'd be surprised that stuff like this did go on in the Old Testament. Look at this other excerpt I'm reading from GodQuestions.org. Look at this other one. So this one is a part of why did God command the genocide of the Canaanites? Because remember I said that the Israel just doing what they always know. They're just doing what they always were taught to do. So look at this. It says in Deuteronomy 20:16-17, God commanded the Israelites in the cities of the nations, the Lord your God is giving you as inheritance. Do not leave anything alive that breathes. Completely destroy them. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as the Lord God is commanding you. And a similar command is given concerning the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15:2-3. But look at this. Look at this first, because they're going to go into something deeper in this. Watch this. It says that before we look at the reasons given in Scripture for the commands to exterminate certain groups of people, it's important to realize that the Israelites were not given free rein to slaughter everyone they met. Consider the following. The standard procedure for battling a city was to first extend terms of peace, Deuteronomy 20:10. If the terms were accepted, the people of that city lived and became subservient to Israel. That's what we're having today. They do not want to be subservient to Israel. If the terms were rejected, the city was besieged and the men were killed, but the women and children were spared. Attacking the city within Canaan called for different rules and represented an execution to this standard. God did not sanction all of the wars recorded in the Old Testament. The battles that were of the conquest of Canaan were intended for a particular time and limited to a particular people group. The conquest of Canaan had clear limits, geographically and historically. So if you go and trace that to now, this is where you see where it said that everything in every action, if it didn't come within the bounds of the historical and geographical lane that God has given to Israel, then Israel is out of bounds. But if it's in the bounds of what God has said, the land that He's given them, then it is in bounds. But then vice versa, if they didn't extend peace offerings and try to do X, Y, and Z, then Israel is out of bounds. They didn't extend that. If they did extend that and gave those things and I heard that and it's actually reported that that's actually some of it happened, where they actually told people and gave them time to get out before they went in. But if they didn't do the whole thing correctly, then Israel is out of bounds. So it's like God gives strict reasons of told Israel how to do this, and they have to do it correctly the way God say. Otherwise, stuff is going to go haywire. So that's, we kind of see. But today, like I said, things are going to go crazy a lot of times anyway, because they don't think that other people, Palestinians and other people, Iranians, and just the United Nations, whoever, don't think that all the land belongs to Israel to begin with. So this is important right here. This part that I'm going to end with, this is important, because some people might say, or two things. Some people might say that the church replaces Israel, and that's why we shouldn't be worried about all the situation going on with Israel, because Israel is done away with because the New Testament has came. Well, I hear what you're saying, but Romans 11, Paul completely tears down that argument, because he said that he literally tells us not to forget about Israel. He's like, God ain't done with them. He's like, if you think that way and then start living your life a certain way, he's like, how quickly can God take away the olive, the branch that was grafted in? Christians were grafted into the promises of Abraham and the promises of God. How quickly can we be removed if the real natural olive branch or stems were taken off? If Israel was taken off for all what they did for rejecting Christ, how easily can we be removed, who are not the natural olive branches? So, and he was like, God's not done with them. God is going, in the end of time, he was like, Paul said that all of Israel is going to be saved, because God has already promised this. He's not talking about Israel right now. He's talking about when Christ come back and they see the Lord come back. Those Jews at the time, when Christ shows up and cracks the sky, at that time, God, all of Israel is going to be saved. And then the Jews at that time, or Israel at that time entirely. And then God's going to use them. That's when the 144,000 witnesses come into play. That's when all those things come into play, when Israel is now following the Lord in the proper sense. But one quick note on that to let everybody know. So people would say, okay, I got that, but what else do you have? Well, Zechariah 14 is, man, it is a powerful passage. Zechariah 14 talks about the day of the Lord that's coming. In the end, he was like, and this is how you know, because this prophecy is ridiculous, meaning it's amazing. So it said that in the end, it said that all the nations that's going to be, they're going to be surrounding, they're going to be all around Israel, and they're going to be waiting to attack them and destroy them. Because it talks about, we see that today, where it's like multiple of the places around Israel, like those countries, they just don't like them. The other countries just don't like them. And so God's like, in the day of the Lord, that great day of the Lord that's coming, that the day of the Lord that's coming, he's like, all the nations is going to be surrounding Israel, ready to destroy them. And then it said that Christ Almighty is going to come back on the Mount of Olives. Why is that important? Trace back to when Jesus ascended into heaven after his resurrection. He was standing on the Mount of Olives when he ascended back into heaven. So Jesus is going to come back on the same mountain that he ascended from, come back and descend on that same mountain and say, yeah, I am here. I'm that guy. That's a bad man right there. He said, I'm gonna come back on the same mountain that I ascended from. And he said the Mount of Olives is gonna split in two. It's just gonna just split. However way it's gonna happen. And he was like, he's gonna destroy all the enemies of Israel that surround and hurt them. So when you see all these things happening, setting themselves in place, all these nearby nations that are starting to hate, you see the reports. Oh, this Egypt or whoever, Iran, whoever, Russia, whoever, say we despise Israel. We do not think they should exist. Whatever case may see, you like, this is normal. You should look at that and be like, oh, that's what the Lord said. And when he come back, he's going to destroy them all. That's just what it says. So all these stuff is setting themselves up. And as much as we don't want to see this war, I get it. I don't want to see it either. But the Bible kind of says that it's going to happen. Not because any of God's doing, but because man's heart is stubborn. So in the meanwhile, Israel can be doing some things wrong, but at the end of the day, all that land that's there is their land, and at the same time as well, we know it's only gonna get worse. And God, that land is at the end of all of this, Israel is not gonna lose. That's basically what it is. After all of this, Israel is not gonna lose. It's just what God already said. So they're not going to lose. So we just got to pray for God's mercy. And meanwhile, that many people can be saved and saved from death and saved for spiritual death. And that guide the people, help them, help Palestinians and Israelites to accept Christ Almighty, because we need him. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, man. This one, I believe, is important, but I hope you understood it. So that's my purpose, for you to understand this is the word spoken. I will see you next time. Peace.